two, one. Welcome back, everybody. This is Junaid, and I know it's my birthday, and it's been fun receiving all the messages on Facebook, Instagram, text messages, emails, LinkedIn. Like, there's so many different platforms, you kind of forget how many things you sign up with. But what I'm really excited about today is the topic of conversation. And the topic of conversation is really powerful because the guest that I have coming on, she talks about living your light and embracing authenticity. So being super authentic, myself here, and sharing what's really going on today. Super excited. Not only is it my birthday, but I've also been able to publish my very first book on home studio evolution, home studio mastery. So check it out when you get a chance. You'll see the post on my Facebook, my LinkedIn, and other places. But without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, and today's episode is one you don't want to miss. Imagine transforming from being broke into becoming a philanthropic multi-entrepreneur. From a trauma survivor to a soul searcher, and from anxious and afraid to embodying courageous, divine feminine energy. Our guest today has done all of this and more. Sabine Schoepke is a best-selling author, podcaster, and guide for midlifers who inspire countless individuals to live their light. Welcome, Sabine. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, I want to talk about there's so many things that you've gone through. You've got a very rich journey. Right now you're in the beautiful Alps in Germany, but can you share a bit about your background and the journey that led you to where you are today?
So I have come pretty much full circle in the last 50 some years. I originally started off in Germany. I was born in Germany. And then at the age of 17, I went to Canada on my own and I went to school there. And then by the time I was 19, I was actually homeless in Toronto. And I started my first company from a park bench in Toronto. And from there, I went to university and got a business degree, and then decided that I was actually better off doing my own thing than getting a job when I graduated. And I expanded the company I had started into the US, and I shortly thereafter moved to Los Angeles.
Mm.
And from there, I had multiple companies, and yeah, I was there until December 31st, this last December, when last year in June I sold my latest company and decided I wanted to get out of the rat race
Mm.
and do something different. It was time to change gears, and I sold everything. So I sold the company in June last year, and then I sold all of my earthly belongings, my house and my cars, furniture, everything. And then with three suitcases, I was standing at LAX and I took off to Munich, where I have been pretty much since then. I
Wow.
travel quite a bit around Europe, but so yeah, I've
You're living really light, so you can have absolutely travel everywhere, which is sort of so amazing. Which is so amazing. You get to see that kind of journey, and it opens up your eyes. Like, what are we really here for? Right? When we leave this earth, when we leave this planet, we leave nothing at all.
right.
What
And
was?
that's kind of what I realized just before COVID hit. I
Mm.
I realized that I had checked all of the boxes on what I had imagined for my life pretty much. And I got very depressed because I realized I didn't feel any different than really I had. If anything, I felt really empty. And I would think back, all these times where I started new companies, and especially when I first started like my first company, and I was so broke, and I was sitting on that park bench, but I was so full of energy and these dreams and visions of like what I envisioned for myself, these feelings, and then, like 3, 4 years ago, I felt so empty, and I had achieved it all. And for me, that was very depressing. And I wanted to sell the company back then, but then, COVID hit, and I couldn't, and it actually worked out for me because it gave me a new mission, a new purpose to restructure and make it
Mm-hmm.
work during COVID. And I did extremely well. And at the end, it, it worked out that I sold the company after COVID instead of
Yeah.
before. And but then once this was all over, I was like, okay, I need to get back my original plan. I need to get out of here. I need to find out what else this life is all about. What is it all about? Achieving as it was about being. And
Mm.
so for me to minimize, and simplify my life and travel light. I mean, as hard as it was a very hard 6 months of like getting rid of everything of, clothes and furniture and dishes and everything that was so attached to 3 suitcases, which is not a whole lot when you have
Mm-hmm.
like a 5 bedroom house. It's not a whole lot left. But once it was gone, it was such a relief. And even now, I'm very mindful of what I buy. I mean, I had to get the setup. I had to buy, some lights and a microphone, but whatever I get, I'm very mindful. I'm like, no, I don't want to accumulate stuff again. And I know actually that I haven't arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's so many places I want to go to and live for a while. And um, I don't want to make life that heavy anymore.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, you're living out of 3 suitcases, but there's a show called Jack Reacher. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Amazon Prime, but he literally just lives a complete nomad life. He has no backpack, no nothing. He only, he just maybe has a wallet with ID and the clothes on his back, and that's it. And when he had to move, he's like, "Oh, I just need to buy a toothbrush." But nothing,
Uh-huh.
like he doesn't carry anything. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to live. I mean, he did live an art life of an army, but it was a really interesting show, and what he represented, because literally when we are buried into the ground, we are literally buried with the back on our, with the clothes on our backs, and we don't get to take anything. What
Yeah.
was the pivotal moment that inspired you to transform your life?
Well, I feel like there's a cycle to or my life, like just speaking for myself, there's a cycle to this. And um I did it the first time when I was 17 and I left Germany on my own and I went to Canada and then I
Mm-hmm.
did it again, 10 years later when I left Canada and I went to the US and it's kind of repeated itself over and over again. And did I don't know. I think it's different for each chapter of our lives, that we're looking for the next thing. That's really what it felt like. Um, like back then when I was 17, I was looking for the freedom that a teenager's looking for, And now as a midlifer, I was looking for just peace and quiet and getting out of the hustle.
So looking for peace, looking for the freedom. It's really inspiring because, I mean, I'm here with, four kids, wife and the family, and we have a home, and there's so many things in the house. It's like, oh my god, we try to keep clean, and try to keep aware of what's going on. It's really interesting when you look from the other perspective. Like literally, all of this stuff can go away any minute. So
Right.
what is it all for?
Yeah. And I've been there. I had twins. They're grown now. And I think for me, that probably marked the end of a chapter too. Like when my twins graduated from high school and both of my kids were like, yeah, we lived in LA and both of them were like, we're gonna take off to Europe. We're gonna live
Mm-hmm.
in Switzerland. And I all of a sudden I found myself alone in that big house and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And then it really was my daughter who talked to me because I was sad. I was like, I don't know what is this all for? What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? And she sat down with me and she said, you know what, Mom, you have earned this. The world's your oyster. So
Yeah.
go, explore. You're free now. And it made me very emotional when she said that to me. And I said, okay, then and shortly after I started the process of, selling it all and leaving. And now, I mean, I'm lucky because she's 3 hours away from me and
Yeah.
it's all kind of worked out perfectly because my parents are still alive and they're getting up there in age and I get to spend time with them
Mm-hmm.
regularly. And so it's perfect all around.
Yeah.
Except my son, he ended up going back to LA and he's now in LA and but, I
Yeah.
travel. He
Yeah.
travels.
We travel. Let's go back a little bit when you were, being the multi entrepreneur that you are. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced during those times? Like going back to the park bench, you're so full of energy. Like, hey, I've got to survive. I've got to make sure that I can live. Provide food and whatnot because it's literally a matter of life and death from that perspective, right?
Hmm.
Talk to you about some of those transformations and challenges that you faced and how you overcame them.
It's interesting you asked me for challenges because back then, like looking back now, I think the situation is a lot more serious than I thought it was back then.
Mm,
Back then, I didn't really see challenges.
sure.
I saw lots of opportunities and
Mm,
um, I always went in like 100%, and I still do that today. Like I sold it all now and I left. Where other people are like, oh, you can, rent your house out or put it in storage. I'm like, no. And I did the same thing back then. I
mm,
remember sitting in that park in Toronto and like making a plan of, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Let's do this. There was never I never had a foot in another door where I was like, oh, this is
sure.
my safety net and this is what I'm gonna do. Like I
Ah,
never wasted my energy, my focus on the worst case scenario or
mm,
an exit strategy or plan B. I never had that. Looking back today, and I think that's what happens with age often, I am way more concerned. I'm like, oh my God, this could have ended up really bad. But back then I didn't do that. And in a way, I still don't do that. So I really saw opportunity and I just went for it. I think that's the difference for people who are real true entrepreneurs who just jump in and are like, let's do it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna figure
yeah.
this out. And we figure it out while we're doing it. Where a lot of other people, they overthink things and they concern themselves with, oh my God, this could go wrong, or, this might not work out. And then you'll never do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that makes a huge difference in how you approach life and how you approach challenges. Like I don't see challenges. I even with COVID, people were like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And
Yeah,
and I was like, "No, there is, gosh, there's opportunity in every situation." And I feel like that's how I've gone through my life, like for the most part.
that's really powerful. Tell me what inspired you to say, hey, this is how I'm going to do things? Because I'm sure every single person, we either learn from people around us, the surroundings. You did make a decision to go to Canada from Germany when you were 17. Like, what inspired you to say, hey, I'm going to go do this and try something new? And just a little bit of touch, because I want to see what were some of the influences that you had that said, hey, I can go try this.
Well, my parents were both entrepreneurs, or they still are. And my father was very much into languages, so they always inspired us to go learn another language. So that definitely helped, and they supported me that way. Um, but I want to say generally, I always leaned into my gut and my heart. Like whatever ideas I have had, no matter how crazy they seem to other people, I was really good at shutting out the noise and just leaning into, my gut feeling and what
Mm-hmm.
my heart's telling me, and I just went for it.
I love that. Can you explain what it means to be a light warrior and how you embody this in your daily life? Because I think the terminology you use, it's it not only comes from your gut, but it also comes from what you saw around you happening. Because as parents or as kids, we learn a lot from our parents. Now, you mentioned that your parents were and are still entrepreneurs. And when you see that, you're like, wow, that's how life is. Like, you don't know any other way. People ask me, what was it like living in Saudi Arabia? Because I grew up in Saudi Arabia, from age
Mm.
6 to 19. I was like, that was life. What do you mean, what was it like? I mean, that's all I knew. So talk to me about Light
Yeah,
Warrior and.
I don't know. I see growing up in Germany and being back here now, it's um it's very grounded.
Mm,
People who I meet here now, they don't really um appreciate very much what I do. They think it's all voodoo, and
interesting.
they're very grounded, and they say they're one like much closer to the earth, and they look at the moon and decide whether they're going to cut hair or cut the grass, like they're like, who needs this? So I
Mm,
don't think I had any of that. I was very I think what I took away from home or with me was this, you just got to get through this. Like, just do it. Just very disciplined, very structured, very hardworking. I think that really served me. But when it comes to the spiritual part, the light warrior part, that's something I've only really like consciously discovered, even though I think it guided me all my life, but I really consciously discovered it over the last, I want to say probably 15 years.
mm,
Um, it's, and I've experienced enough like terrible things. Like I was attacked in a home invasion in my sleep and had terrible PTSD and
wow.
like things like that. Like I had cancer, I dealt with infertility, like I went through bankruptcy twice. Like all of these things for me, there's darkness, like real darkness. And
Mm,
especially when it comes to like mental health issues, when it comes to things like PTSD and depression and that kind of a thing. There's this darkness, but I have always found that light again that I could bring back into the darkness.
Hmm.
So I've gotten really good at allowing myself to feel what I had to feel and, you know, be kind to myself and graceful to myself. But at the same time, there was always this light I could tune back into that helped me to actually lighten up the darkness that I was
Hmm.
dealing with.
So that's the light warrior. You know about it, and when you're facing crazy experiences, darkness, like, hey, I have a little bit of spark, and it's true when even if there's a teeny bit of light in a really dark room, it lights up the entire room.
Right. And, I also feel like there is value in the darkness. Like all of the things that I've experienced, I eventually I could look back onto, and as crazy as it sound, but I c- I appreciate them as gifts that actually have made me grow beyond that because
Yeah.
otherwise I would not have been able to get through them. So in the dark itself, there is a light, and when you're open to that, you can find it. Like even when I had terrible PTSD and after, all the legal stuff with the attacker and everything, I I found that place and I could forgive that person and I found the light. And from there, my entire life changed. And today I look at what happened to me. I look back at that and I realize it was a gift because my life was never the same after that, but in a good way.
Yeah.
That I grew through this and expanded into this. It's like even that was extremely powerful. And there's a light that came from that.
That's really powerful. I love it. Especially when you're able to see the fine lines. Hey, what does it really mean? I want to ask you a question. What is some of the advice that you have for someone feeling stuck in their midlife or unsure how to make a change? Where should they go? How should they start?
Well, that's a really big question, and it really kind of depends on where they feel stuck, you know. Um, I try to cover a lot of ground in my podcast, and I share a lot of my own experiences. Um, of what I'm dealing with, and I'm very
Mm-hmm.
raw and very open. Like even what I'm going through right now with, relocating myself and, you know, I am in the mountains. I am completely isolated. There's days go by. I don't talk to anybody. I don't see anybody. I mean, I have conversations like this, but
Sure.
in person, there's sometimes like an entire week goes by before I see a person. And that was by design because there was something I was struggling with. And that's really my the broadest advice I can give is like to dig deep. I feel like in our society right now, in our culture, there's a lot of advice that's kind of it's band-aids, it's temporary fixes.
Mm.
Um, And I realized I did quite a bit of that myself. Like I habitually had a glass of whiskey every night or two, to take the edge off, or um, people go shopping, like they do their shopping therapy to make themselves happy. Like to me, these are all, just temporary band-aids that
Yeah.
really don't solve anything because after, the wine or the whiskey wears off, you're right back where you started. So really the goal is to dig deeper and find out, okay, what's the underlying issue here? What's the real issue? And that's not solved with a band-aid. And that's why I put myself here too is because I said I wanted to deal with one big factor for me was the factor of loneliness. Like I wanted to get to the source of that and say, why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
But that requires courage and it requires, vulnerability and being honest with yourself. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do what I did and,
Sure.
move continents, but depending on what it is and what you're struggling with, the real solution is to dig deep and just go and face it. And I know it's hard and it's painful. I mean, I
Yeah.
have days where I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? Putting myself into this solitary confinement. But for the most part, gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so
Mm.
happy with what I did because, again, I can feel I'm growing and I
Yeah.
appreciate, where I'm at today compared to even 6 months ago.
You have that clarity. You have
Yeah.
that peace of mind, right? Not having to worry about the inner workings of a company, the inner workings of a house, and making sure all the things are happening. Wow,
And
that's
you know what? I just
totally
went back to LA because I had some, you know, clients to work with. And so I
sure.
went back for like 3 weeks. And it was interesting because even on my way to the airport at Munich, I was driving and I was like, what if I get back there and I realize how much I miss it or, how much I miss being with my friends or
Yeah.
family. And I was like, well, let's just see. And I got back there and I was like, oh no. Because I realized it was so busy and there was so much distraction and so much
Yes.
noise and so much,
Yes.
you have to do this and you have to do that. And I really couldn't get to like that inside, and
Mm.
where I can get to here, where it's like, there's nothing distracting me.
Yeah.
And I flew back and I was so excited to come back here and just keep digging and keep focusing and no excuses. Like this is my schedule, this is what I'm doing, and this is the work that I'm doing on
Yeah.
myself, on for others, and it's beautiful.
Now you've been a huge philanthropy. You've been a huge philanthropist. What has that? What is? What role has philanthropy played in your life, and why is it important to you?
So yeah, so when the last company I had was a philanthropic enterprise. So I was giving back and the main organizations I give back to was to children and families transitioning out of homelessness because that
Mm-hmm.
was an important, part of my story. And um it was my attempt at that time to find purpose in my business dealings.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, I feel like I was driven by fear of having to provide for myself, uh, and then when that wasn't the case anymore, and there comes the point where you're like, okay, my bills are paid, I'm okay, and then the return of joy actually diminishes. It doesn't matter anymore at some point how much money you're making, like, okay,
Right.
you're making money. All right. And now what? And so I had to add something else to this that actually made it fulfilling for me and meaningful for me. And so, adding that component to that last business that I had was beautiful. It made it worthwhile for me every day to get out of bed and, power away and make it better.
Wow, that's really inspiring because when you mentioned about the chaos, right? The chaos that you had to experience when you were visiting. Um, there's a book by Matthew McConaughey called Green Lights. I don't know if you had a chance to read it yet,
No.
but he was the youngest of three boys, right? But the older two boys were much older, so it was almost like he was a only child. So he spent a lot of time alone, growing up on the farm, growing up on where his dad used to work, and he spent a lot of time, alone, and that gave him a lot of clarity. And over the years,
Hmm.
even when he started acting and started doing different things, he would go away for many, many years just to get that reset,
Right.
you know. And it was really interesting, like listening to him and talking about him talking about the things and why he did it and what it enabled him to do. You basically shut down everything else. It's so that you can come ahead and use the brains that we have, because we live in a world where there's constantly messages
Yeah.
coming in. Do this, do this, do that, but and then we don't get the time to actually spend inside our own brains. So it's awesome that you get to do that where you are today.
Yeah, I looked back and I thought when I flew back from LA to here, I thought, oh my God, all the work I did, in the first like 4.5 months, I couldn't have done that in years in LA. There's no way. I mean, just spending hours on the freeway every day and everything that comes with it. You're like, oh God. And then it was really funny because I was driving back from Munich to the mountains and one of the tunnels of the mountains was closed, so traffic stopped and I was like, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." Everybody turned off their cars and we just sat there and you could hear the birds and it was really green and I was like, "Oh my God, so different." Like 2 days ago, I was sitting on the 405 and I wanted to shoot myself. I was so angry. I felt so like, oh, and
Yeah.
here I'm like, nice. I appreciate it. Wow, very different. And yeah, and I can't say that I think this is gonna last forever, but that's the other thing I feel like, and I would love to tell people who are in all of this, is that we don't need to have all of the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Be okay with not knowing and just focus on the right here and right now. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it is so true. Like I was talking to my daughter earlier and who's thinking about grad school and this and that and which language and which country and which continent and she's doing an internship right now and she's so happy in that internship. And I said, Allie, just enjoy the next 3 weeks. You don't need to get your entire life figured out right now. It's always
Mm-hmm.
going to come differently anyways. And she looked at me, she's like, you're right. Okay. And I think it's like, and a lot of people when I went back to LA asked me, said, so where are you going to go? What are you going to do? How long are you going to stay? And I said, I don't know, but I don't need to know.
I don't need to
It's
know.
going to present itself. It's going to be fine. I am really, really leaning into my writing and the people that I work with and I help and my podcast. And I have so much joy in that
Yeah.
and so much peace that I know I have trust and faith in the process. And it always has in the past. It always works itself out and it's
Yeah.
going to go its way. And I don't need to know all the answers.
There's a really powerful phrase. This too shall pass.
Yep.
You know, if you're having a lot of fun, this too shall pass. If you're going through
Hmm.
dark times, this too shall pass. There was a really cool video clip that I saw where it was a few of these actors and Tom Hanks, and everybody's talking about all the cool things, and then Tom Hanks just repeats, "This too shall pass." Like no matter what it is going to pass. You're going to be in a different place. So if we're present in the present and just think about the things that we can do and be present with the people that we have, that we care about. That's all that really matters because that's what they're going to remember in the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely.
So let's take a quick break. This has been a lot of fun talking with you. I'm kind of getting goosebumps. I mean, there's a lot of lovely stuff. It just reminds me of how fragile and how short our lives are, and then where we go from and where do we end up. And I keep thinking to myself, I have so much. There's so much stuff everywhere, and I'm like, I need to clear this. I need to clear this out, get rid of it, and I just can't find the time. So I need to, work on me. So let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll share 3 hacks. Um,
Let's do it.
awesome. You guys, we've been having a lot of fun talking with Sabine here on the podcast, and I just want to remind you that this too shall pass. I know we talked about that, but what's interesting is I've been using this really powerful software, and I mentioned in the last few episodes this application, this app, Ecamm Live, I think version 4.3 that just dropped on my birthday, I think. At least that's what Katie told me. This thing dropped on my birthday. It's my present where they've completely integrated Zoom application. So you don't really need Zoom running on your computer anymore. If you're going to be doing live streams, you can build it directly into the show on here. And my process has been for the past few years bring on the guests through Zoom because they have a really awesome integration with the different applications that I've been using. And now I can simply bring in the guests into my beautiful looking show over here, all thanks to the integration of Ecamm Live and Zoom. So go check it out, ecammlive.com. There should be a link in the show notes on how you can get access to Ecamm. It's powerful software. You can stream to multiple platforms. You can use it to record your courses and teach people all around the world what you've learned. So let's go back to the episode. Thanks for listening. I got Sabine waiting. Sabine, thanks so much for being here on the podcast. I've enjoyed a lot of the conversation that we had here on the podcast. Let's jump into the 3 hacks that you have for us. Can you share the 3 actionable hacks with our listeners?
Yes, so the first one is don't drive yourself crazy. We have a tendency to compare ourselves with others, but the truth is that we don't really know anything about them. We don't know where they've come from, how long they've been at it, and you know, so do not drive yourself insane by comparing yourself to others. I think what's a lot more important is to take the time every once in a while to look in the rear view mirror, because that's one of the things I know I didn't do enough. I always kept pushing forward, and I was never really satisfied where I was at. I always thought you can do more, you can work harder, you can, but really when I would stop and actually take a step back and look in the rearview mirror, I realized, oh my God, I have come so far.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that in itself is the greatest inspiration and motivation of them all, because you know how far you have come. So, that's that's one I would love to pass on.
Don't
The other
drive
one
yourself
is
crazy. Okay. I
yes,
like
don't
it.
drive yourself crazy because you're your worst critic and you're gonna put the most
Yes.
pressure on yourself of
Oh my
everybody.
God.
So
Tell me
stop
about
it.
it. Publishing this book, I kept going back to the manuscript. I'm like, oh, I can add this, and I keep, Like, no, I need to stop and just push it out there because there's going to be another book. And then I can do all the things
right?
that I didn't get to do on here on that one.
And that's the other thing. The reality is we will never arrive. Like it will
Mm-hmm.
never be good enough. You
Yeah.
know, I've experienced that with all the work I've done. I've experienced that. I became a bodybuilder 5 years ago. I became a bodybuilder, and I kept thinking, I'm not going to compete. I need to get bigger. I need to build some more muscle here. And the thing is, you will never arrive. We will never arrive. And if we
Yeah.
wait for that, it's never going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing about driving yourself crazy. Um, the second one is, and I kind of mentioned that before, was about there's always opportunity. When you think something is not working out or, something circumstances hit and you don't like it, just take a step back and look at this and see what other opportunities are being presented to you. Because there's always opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
always. And that's the difference between the people who are really successful and the ones that are not, is that, you see that, you see the silver lining, you see that little light in the darkness, you're going to be the one who's going to move forward and who's going to be successful.
I love that.
So, and the other one, it's really kind of cheesy, but
I like
what
cheesy
works
ones.
for
Come
me,
on, bring it on.
for me is when I hit a wall, whether it's in my writing or it's in the past with my businesses or whatever it is, I get outside.
Mm.
Like today, I worked. For me now, it's midnight, and I've worked all day. But by I think it was like 4 o'clock, I kind of hit a wall, and I was like, oh my God. And I could tell I was getting, you know, frantic about what I was working on. I was
Yeah.
like, that's it. And I just got to push myself, even though I don't feel like it. I got to push myself. I put on my sneakers and I did a 3 mile hike. And I came back and I was like, yes,
Mm.
okay. And I was all pumped again. And, and my head was open, my heart was open, and things just started flowing. And it was good. It was good. And I
Nice.
think that's the biggest hack of them all. Just get out of your head, go outside.
And that's really powerful because when you go outside, you start moving your body. Your mind is no longer in control because your body is moving. And now the mind can relax and enjoy the other things that you see with your eyes. Love it.
Yeah. I think I read somewhere that emotion is energy in motion. And it is so true.
Yeah.
Like when we just sit here and we're like forcing ourselves to get something done or move forward, it doesn't happen.
No, it
No,
doesn't.
we go out there and we start moving. And I mean, these are big mountains. My heart was like, I'm like, oh my God, if I have a heart attack here, nobody's gonna find me. But God, it felt good.
Yeah. I love it. All right, let's go to the next segment, getting to know you with the fun 6 questions. Number 1, what is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
So I wish I would have done something that has to do with flying or free falling,
Hmm.
like skydiving or paragliding.
Oh my God.
And I see a lot of that. I look out of my window and I see all of these paraglides. And I, my daughter just, when she came to visit last week, she said, Mom, we should really do that. And I'm like, I mean, I can still do it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
A little
feel
scared.
like that's a lot of stress, like a lot of
Hmm.
nerves.
Well, maybe you should start in an enclosed environment, like in I don't know if they have it there, but there's something called iFly where they basically put you in a little jumpsuit and you're basically flying in top of a fan, so if you get that freeing feeling.
See, but th that's not me.
That's not
That's
you.
like No, I go all in or not at all. So it's either jumping off that massive mountain over there or mm-mm.
I got you. I got you. That's a cool one to. I'll check in with you next year and see. Did you do it
See if I
yet?
did it. Yeah, you
Next
already
up,
know me. You're like, she
right?
probably did
She's
it.
probably done it. All right.
Yeah.
Next up, what did you want to be when you were a child?
It's really funny because I always wanted to be a jewelry designer, and
Mm,
that last business that I had and sold, and it was such a love project for me when I started it 15 years ago. It was a jewelry design company, a custom jewelry design company.
nice.
Yeah.
And this is in Canada.
No, that was
Oh,
here.
this
That was
this
in
in
Los
LA.
Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
My friend from she's in Canada and she does these custom jewelry design, but she'll talk to the person
Hmm.
and then she'll have a dream about what to create for them. I'm like, wow, that's something else.
Wow. That's
Next up,
awesome.
yeah, it is. It's pretty fun. Next up, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Well, movies, it's The Green Mile. I
Mm,
love The Green Mile with Tom Hanks.
it's a powerful movie.
Yeah. And I am afraid to tell you what my favorite TV show is because I'm gonna ruin my reputation.
uh, no, it won't. I don't think so.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
It's it's Grey's Anatomy. I
Mm,
can binge watch this for hours, and I don't really watch TV, but
yeah.
that, oh my gosh, I can go all night and just watch and watch one after another. And yeah,
Nice. All right, we'll move on to the next question. That's a good show, though. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Wonder Woman.
Yes, I love it.
Yes,
Which takes us
yes.
to the next question. Who is your favorite superhero?
Well, there she
Well,
is.
there she is. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Backgammon.
Backgammon.
Mhm.
Nice. Sabine, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for playing, sharing, and you know, talking to me on this podcast. This was a lot of fun. Can't wait to check
Yeah, I
out your
appreciate it.
podcast. And where can my audience find you?
So the most central place is my website, which is called thepowerlifecoach.com. And I have a podcast that's called The Power Life Coach. And
Okay,
but all the links are on my website at thepowerlifecoach.com.
perfect. We'll be sure to include all the links to the episode.
Thank you.
Thanks so much again, Sabine.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, it was a lot of fun talking with Sabine. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll catch you in the next episode. Talk to you guys soon.